Hey everybody, it's Jason Calacanis, and this is an emergency episode of This Week in Startups. We like to do these from time to time when we have breaking news, so this is a bonus emergency episode. And today, we're going to talk about this general counsels of a number of the major tech firms speaking before a Senate committee hearing today and yesterday, November 1st and October 31st, Halloween, and the overarching issue is Russian interference in the American election via social media platforms like Twitter and Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, and also the content sites like YouTube, and obviously Reddit had a little bit of a stake here as well in the chaos. And to give a little background, we have learned over the last couple of weeks that the $100,000 ad buy on Facebook, or the ad buy which only resulted in 100,000 people viewing it, has now been upgraded to 120 million people have seen that content, and content from those pages on Facebook. And then during this hearing, they upped that estimate to 150 million. Obviously, 130 million or so, 137 million people voted in the election. So now the number of people in America who saw fake news and divisive ads is greater than the number of people who voted. And that is truly interesting as a insight coming out of this grilling, and it was a grilling. With me today, I have Inside's president, Austin Smith, with me. How are you, Austin?
Hey there, thanks for having me.
And from Los Angeles, we have Lon Harris, who is our editor-in-chief or editorial director. What do we call you, Lon?
I think editor-in-chief is what we started doing because it's more clear that, that's what I'm doing with all the newsletters.
All right, Lon, let's go to you first. I know that you write about this every day with the team over at Inside, and hundreds of thousands of people are subscribed. What was your take on what we saw in the last 2 days with these tech companies getting grilled by the senators?
Well, I think it's interesting because a lot of people sort of already suspected the one level of it, that there were definitely these strange sort of fake news stories, and there was this kind of propaganda making its way out there. I think a lot of people had already kind of adjusted to that like there are ways to use platforms like Twitter and Facebook that are kind of nefarious. Some bad actors, maybe overseas, were trying to influence. I think that part was pretty clear. The part that is so surprising and I think upsetting, and I think as this story continues to grow is going to be really shocking to a lot of Americans, is that these companies were sort of openly accepting this kind of advertising, that it wasn't just people posting, fake news or whatever, like making up their own blog and sort of disseminating false information. It was these campaigns, these marketing campaigns that Twitter and Facebook and Google were sort of privy to. They were part of it. And now it becomes a question of how much did they know and at what point did they know, which is sort of always what cover-up questions end up coming down to.
Yeah, and it was very interesting when we look at the questioning. I thought one of the great moments was Senator Al Franken. Now, you don't expect the senators to maybe have the highest tech knowledge. The average age is in their 50s or 60s. But in a way, we've all gotten this incredible civics lesson on how government works here in the tech business because, we don't know exactly how pardons work or maybe how executive orders work. And we're kind of getting up to speed on these things that were edge cases in politics. Now, the senators are getting up to speed on the edge cases in our business. But I thought Senator Al Franken had an incredible moment yesterday, October 31st, when he was grilling Facebook's general counsel, Colin Stretch, who I think did a terrible job. And I'll just play a moment of that.
How did Facebook, which prides itself on being able to process billions of data points and instantly transform them into personal connections for its user, somehow not make the connection that electoral ads paid for in rubles were coming from Russia? Those are two data points. American political ads and Russian money, rubles. How could you not connect those two dots.
Senator, you mentioned one aspect of the Russian threat that was so visible in 2016, which was the question of account compromise, stealing contents, and disseminating them. And that's a threat our security team was intensely focused on, and we think effectively addressed. I think in hindsight, we should have had a broader lens. There were signals we missed, and we are now focused.
People are buying ads on your platform with rubles. They're political ads. You put billions of data points together all the time. That's what I hear that these platforms do.
Okay, I'll stop Al Franken there. He's basically putting this connection together that you accepted rubles for political ads in the United States, and he is confounded how Facebook, which puts together all of this incredible information across the internet to target people in ads, couldn't have the basic common sense to say we should not let somebody paying in rubles buy political ads. What are your thoughts on this, Austin? Is this a fair criticism?
Yeah, so, well, I guess I would say in hindsight, it's obvious to them. And I think that the absolute best, most innocent case that Facebook could make here is they kind of turned a blind eye. They knew that people bought ads on Facebook for all sorts of strange things or sketchy things, and they let it happen because they never thought that it would compromise democracy at scale. And so that's kind of the best, the most innocent they could possibly be. And then I think it could cut a lot worse because it was a lot of money being spent. And this platform has been built by some of the best data scientists in the world, and they really understand how advertising works and who spends money on advertising and what consumer behaviors are changed through advertising. And so I think that they really understand these things. And I think that the more likely explanation is really that they probably had some sense of this and either explained it away by saying that it wouldn't shift the outcome of the election, or by sort of just turning a blind eye because they wanted to make a buck.
What's your thoughts on that, Lon?
Well, I think, we heard questioning from Senator James Lankford today, and both Facebook and Twitter said that going all the way back to 2015, they were aware of questionable sort of Russian activity. They were looking into it. There was clear attempts from some Russian actors to influence things. They were already looking at that at 2015, but then you have Mark Zuckerberg coming out when these allegations are first being made post-election and saying he thinks it's a crazy idea that Facebook could be influencing people's discussion in this way. You have them continuing to sell these ads all throughout late 2016 as we lead into the election. So it's hard to square that being suspicious in 2015 and then continuing on like it's crazy that this would possibly have any influence in late 2016 and then even into 2017.
I thought this was particularly disturbing because after that Al Franken discussion about connecting rubles, Al Franken, who is just a tremendous debater during these hearings, he's done an incredible job because I've seen him do this 2 or 3 times. He likes to put pressure on these witnesses and these people testifying. I guess you can call them witnesses or experts. And he said, well, would you accept the North Korean won? And this was particularly troubling because the general counsel of Facebook could not make the simple statement, no, we would never accept the North Korean won, which, the most dangerous regime on the planet Earth, a dictator who's got millions of people in gulags, threatening the world with nuclear weapons. I mean, a total rogue nation. My follow-up question would have been, if I was Al Franken, would you agree to not accept money from ISIS? Like, at what point will Facebook not agree to accept money? Austin, what are your thoughts on that exchange where the general counsel would not just at least say, we're not going to accept North Korean won?
So obviously he probably should have just said they won't accept it, and I think that's fine. But I actually think the currency that the platform is accepting is pretty irrelevant. I mean, any bad actors are perfectly capable of making these purchases with any currency. And so I don't think I think the content of the ads is what's really interesting, where you have these ads that were were divisive, and I think I saw some that used the word "kill" in them, and so it's like horrible content in these ads that if there's any sort of approval process going on at Facebook, they should have been spotting these things and understanding that they were manipulative and dishonest and all these other things. And so I don't know that the currency is the most important thing, but at the same time, yeah, they should agree not to take the currency of a regime
insane
like North
dictator.
Korea. Yeah.
Real tension in these companies and how they are perceived and how they operate. They are aiming to be global brands like Google and Twitter and Facebook. They don't really want to be thought of as American companies. They want to be for everybody. They're headquartered here, but they don't necessarily think of themselves that way. And I don't necessarily think Americans view them that way. I think Americans think Facebook is ours, Twitter is ours, Google is an American company. They are loyal to America. They have America's best interest at heart. And I think that this is really a tension that hasn't surfaced a lot up until now, that is now repeatedly going to surface. That, well, if Facebook is an American company and has America's best interest at heart, of course it wouldn't be taking North Korean currency. I agree with Austin saying that functionally it doesn't matter because you could just turn it into Bitcoin, turn it into something else, whatever. But it does highlight this ongoing issue that I think a lot of Americans are going to be pretty disturbed to find out that Facebook doesn't necessarily value America over anywhere else.
Yeah, that was a particularly disturbing turn of events. I think it's a really interesting insight, Lon, which is this is the first time that their actual patriotism and their allegiance is actually being tested, because they do make the majority of their revenue outside the U.S. now. So who are they exactly loyal to? And let's go to GOP Senator Kennedy, who just absolutely destroyed the Facebook General Counsel yesterday. Let's listen in.
Mr. Stretch, how many advertisers does Facebook have?
We have approximately 5 million advertisers on a monthly basis, Senator.
Did China run ads in the last election cycle that tried to impact our election?
Not that I'm aware of, Senator.
Not that you're aware of. Did Turkmenistan?
No, Senator, not that I'm aware of. We have...
How about North Korea? Turn that off.
I'm not aware of other foreign actors running the same sort of campaign.
How can you be aware? I mean, this is what I mean. You've got 5 million advertisers, and you're going to tell me that you're able to trace the origin of all of those advertisements? If I want to hire a lawyer, if I wanted to hire you when you were in private practice, you have an incredible resume, and say, let's go through about 4 shell corporations. I want to run some ads, and let's go through 4 or 5 shell corporations because I want to hide my identity. You're telling me you have the ability to trace through all of these corporations and find the true identity of every one of your advertisers? You're not telling me that, are you?
Senator, the commitment we are making
No, sir, I'm just asking about your ability, not commitment. Can you do it today?
We're not able to see beyond the activity we see on the platform, the technical signals that we get from an account. Now, we do think that the technical signals we see can be used to help us identify inauthentic behavior.
The truth of the matter is, I'm trying to get us down from la-la land here. The truth of the matter is you have 5 million advertisers that change every month, every minute, probably every second. You don't have the ability to know who every one of those advertisers is, do you? Today, right now. Not your commitment. I'm asking about your ability.
To your question about seeing essentially behind the platform to understand if there are shell corporations, of course the answer is no. We cannot see behind the activity.
Yeah, so this was the complete barbecuing where he pointed out Kennedy correctly, and he said, let's get down from La La Land. I could build 4 or 5 shell corporations, buy ads on Facebook, and you would never be able to identify me, could you? And of course, the GC went into this crazy, nonsensical, our commitment, thank you for your question, filibustering, and he refused to accept that as an answer and forced the GC of Facebook to say, we don't know who's buying the ads on Facebook. And this led me to a very simple proposal. If somebody wants to buy ads and target them at Americans, they should have to do so with a passport connected to those accounts. Or if they want to buy political ads, they have to put their driver's license in, not put in, just the tax ID of some LLC that could have been, to Senator Kennedy's very astute observation, passed through 4 or 5 different LLCs. Austin, what are your thoughts on the fact that they actually have no idea who's placing what ads, and this moment from the testimony as well as my proposal?
Yeah, so I mean, I think for them to, it makes sense that they don't know who all of these people are. And to me, what I would like to see them have a better understanding of is what the agendas of the people are, regardless who they are. But I think your proposal makes perfect sense. I mean, there is not much accountability, and the reason that Facebook is a $500 billion company is that they have created the greatest way in history to manipulate consumer behavior, and that's really powerful. And so I think there has to be some sort of check on that system, because it's okay for Coca-Cola to spend a ton of money using Facebook to get people to buy Coca-Cola, but there are lots and lots of really horrible things that could happen, and I think we've just seen the scratch of the surface there. And so, so I think your proposal makes sense. I think there are a lot of different things that, between regulations and just corporate responsibility over at Facebook, I think there are a lot of things that could be done to improve this.
Lon, what are your thoughts? Yeah.
3 levels to it. There's what technically is Facebook capable of doing. There's what Facebook is sort of willing to do, and then there's what like the senators think is like the right thing to do. And I'm not sure we're really having a valuable conversation, because it seems like nobody's really talking on the same level. Like the senators have forwarded Senator Mark Warner, who's been very vocal during these hearings. He's proposed the Honest Ads Act with a few other senators, including John McCain's in that group. And it's a good idea. It's like internet companies would have to disclose who's advertising, and they would have to store copies of all advertising that they accept, so that in a situation like now, we could go back and look through all these ads and figure out who started them and where it all came from. That's a good idea, but I don't know how functionally it would work, because just like we were talking about, well, what's stopping someone from sort of hiding who they really are and buying it through some company whose name isn't going to mean anything if it's displayed? We want to know who the real people are behind it. So I think we're still in this vague space where people kind of know what we want to do, but we really have to get down to like, well, what can these companies do? And then once we know what they can do, like, what do we actually expect them to do?
Yeah, what would be interesting to me is if when political ads were placed, if I was forced to put my driver's license in as an American, I would know that my name would forever be associated with an ad that had fake information in it determined to cause divisiveness and division in America. Now,
think about ads that go on TV. We already expect that at the end of a John McCain for Senate ad, he has to go, "I'm John McCain and I approve this message." Like, that's already built into our system of sort of how we process political ads. It's just that as soon as you go online, it's like the Wild West.
And putting it underneath the ad, the targeting, I think would be great. Top level display of targeting. So if you want to use this incredible targeting, I think on the top level, it should say, this ad was targeted to 19 to 25-year-olds in 90210 who are African American or Hispanic and who have income levels between $35,000 and $75,000. And if you force them to put that on the top level, even if it was in a slightly smaller font, or it said targeting and it like started to explain it in one line and said more, so you could just drop it open right there, this would create an awareness in the populace of how this works. And I think that's one of the issues here, is that consumers don't actually know how they're being targeted and how granular it is. And there was another moment where I believe that the GC, and I don't know if you can perjure yourself in this, but I believe he was either lying, dishonest, or clueless, which is when asked if you could target an individual user on Facebook, he said that was not possible. The senator said, I have a profile, the other senators have profiles, can you target us? And he said, no, you can't target individual users. This is actually completely factually incorrect. Their marketing materials online talk about custom audiences. Austin, explain how custom audiences work, because we use them here at Inside and Launch to sell tickets to events, and explain the general concept of a custom audience.
Yeah, so a custom audience it's a really powerful marketing tool, and it basically allows you to upload a list of email addresses and then show ads to Facebook users who have those email addresses signed to sorry, I heard something in my headphones.
Yeah, keep going.
Oh, are you playing a video? Sorry.
No.
Okay. So you can show ads only to the people who have Facebook accounts associated with the email addresses that you have uploaded. And so people use this for all sorts of things. If you sign up for an email newsletter at Warby Parker, then Warby Parker might show you ads using your email address, show you ads on Facebook for their sunglasses. And you can use this, you can build audiences of thousands of people or as few as 20 people. And so the tool doesn't let you target a single individual person, but if you have that person's email address, you can throw any other 19 email addresses in and you'll be showing your ad to a couple other people, but you can very easily, if you want one specific person to see your ad, you can make that happen really easily with Facebook's tools.
Lon, what are your thoughts on this intellectual dishonesty, I'll call it? Because in addition to custom audiences, you have the idea of retargeting, which is if you were to visit a website, if I sent you a link saying, hey, Lon, here's a review of your latest podcast, you clicked on it, you visit that website, you get tagged with a cookie, and I can make that page just for you. And that page would then allow you to retarget just you along your journey on the web. And Google, Facebook, AdRoll, everybody's got retargeting. That's why if you do a search on Amazon or Google for a product, you're looking for sneakers, you'll see sneakers on Drudge Report and ESPN and New York Post for a week or two because they'll all be retargeting you. Everybody's had this experience. So what do you think of the general counsel not explaining that level of detail? And is it something where you think because they didn't ask it more pointedly that they were being dishonest? And what's your sense there? Or that maybe the GC doesn't understand how their own company's ad network works? Is that possible?
I don't think that last one's reasonable. I think that they definitely understand that there are mechanisms that you could use by which you would target an individual. I think that they are being slippery with the truth and counting on the fact that the senators maybe are not going to know as deep or understand what's happening. A lot of lawmakers don't realize that the ads that pop up are targeted specifically to you. When you see ads on the web, they always get in trouble for like, how come I'm always seeing, vacation here, girls in bikinis? And it's like, well, that's because what you're searching for. So I think that the general counsel was sort of using the fact that a lot of people don't really understand the nuances of this to kind of play a little fast and loose with it. Because technically, it's not like you could go on Facebook and I could type in the name Jason Calacanis and say, I want to send ads just to him. So I think that's what they're saying, is that it's not built into their system to do that. Not that there aren't ways that you can use the system to generate that same result, which of course you can. I mean, I think in general, with all this stuff, tech companies always are trying to use the fact that lawmakers don't understand what they're doing as well as they do and sort of try to present things in the best light possible. I think that fortunately we're sort of starting just now to enter an era where there are going to be more lawmakers who kind of came up with at least some rudimentary technology, and it's not, we're hopefully getting past the series of tubes era.
Yeah.
And they'll be a bit more savvy so that they can't quite get away with it as badly. But I definitely think that answer is an example of like, oh, these old senators aren't going to know the difference, and I can sort of tell them that it's just not possible and they'll buy it.
The additional hypocrisy, and this is, I was on CNBC earlier today, and they were like, hey, listen, you're a tech guy. Why are you throwing these tech companies under the bus? And I said, listen, I'm an American first and foremost. I think they're doing a terrible job of addressing a very serious issue, and it's going to be a huge black eye for the technology industry if we are cavalier and we are fast and loose with the facts and dishonest with how this actually works. Another moment of great dishonesty I felt was from Google's general counsel yesterday, who, when asked if they were a content company or a platform for people to put content on, or just a platform, I don't even know if they went to that level, they said, oh, we're just a platform. And I thought to myself, my gosh, YouTube now has and YouTube's an over $10 billion business. It's probably the most vibrant business inside of Google. It is the most vibrant business inside of Google, I would say. 1.5 billion people using it a month. It's basically the same size as Facebook, YouTube. And people spend a lot of time on it, obviously, and video is an amazing way to get your message across. But we all know YouTube owns studio space that they give to content creators that they select based on their ability to create content. They have editorial standards. We saw this when they kicked PewDiePie off the platform or made him unable to make money. So that was their number one person, and they share money and they sell that content to an advertiser. How is that different than CNBC or any other content company?
YouTube Red, which is specifically subscribe to YouTube. We're making original content that you can only see on YouTube Red. I mean, it's sort of the definition of being a content company. That's being a studio. That's being a production company.
They are a production company.
Out here in LA, if you work in digital media, YouTube is it's thought of as one of the places that you go with your pitch when you're trying to get a show made, because YouTube's sucking up all of these shows. It's the same model Amazon's using and Apple is using, and all these companies want to be creating their own content because they've already created the platforms, and now they need stuff to put on the platforms. So yeah, it's ludicrous to pretend that YouTube's not a content creator. And in fact, a lot of the sort of, I hate to use the term, but I'm making air quotes, the alt-right sort of guys gained a lot of prominence. Like, those guys would say Twitter's not that useful to them. Not enough people are on it. It's mostly journalists and professional type people. YouTube, for those guys, is where the audience is. That's where the younger guys that they can reach and they can really start to influence. All those guys blew up on YouTube, not Twitter, not Facebook. So that's original content that's going up on a Google-owned site. That's the whole game. That's it.
Yeah, it was particularly troubling to me to see Google take that just completely inauthentic position. And to add to that, they do upfronts. So if you're at the upfronts on Madison Avenue selling your shows, I mean, it's just amazing that you bring up the YouTube Red thing.
Los Angeles, the Grove, they have that huge wall outside the Grove where they put big billboards up for new shows. And YouTube, the first 3 shows on the side of the Grove are these big billboards for original YouTube shows. They did that Demi Lovato documentary. It came out like 2 weeks ago. Ryan Hansen Solves Crimes on TV just debuted. I mean, they're making shows that are exclusively produced to go on YouTube. It's cut and dry.
I think also beyond just the content that YouTube is creating, I mean, YouTube decides when you type in Donald Trump or anything else into the search bar on YouTube, they decide what you see. And they would argue that it's an algorithm that's optimized for all these things and agnostic of politics or anything else. But at the end of the day, they control the content that users see when they visit YouTube's website. And that, I think this cuts deeper than just them. The fact that they make shows makes them a content company. I think they control the content that users see on their platform, and so they can't just be this this platform that is free of all obligation.
That's, I think, an incredible point, Austin, because that, if you think about what Facebook does in programming the newsfeed and deciding what you see first, that algorithm is a human-written algorithm. It's not an algorithm written by AI. And there are teams that are studying that algorithm, refining it. We're talking about hundreds of people, if not thousands, at Facebook. So they're making an editorial decision as to what to show people, which then makes them a content company. It makes them a media company. If you're going to put the Breitbart story first, or the New York Times story first, or the MSNBC Rachel Maddow clip first, whatever you choose to put first, because you're deciding that person will react to it. And we haven't even gotten into the bias of the algorithm here. We're not even up to that point in this Senate hearing. But when that starts to happen, there's a good chance, and let's get to what we think the ramification is when we get into the second half of this, of how to solve this problem when we get back from this quick commercial break. And let me just take a moment to thank all of the sponsors of Inside. Inside.com has a couple of dozen email newsletters and SMS alert products that we build. And Inside AI is brought to you by Ascent, which is a reg tech company using domain AI to automate the $2 trillion compliance industry. TWiST is also a partner for Inside AI, and they teach data science online, and they have helped students get great jobs at companies like SpaceX, Amazon, and Microsoft. And Kylie.ai, not all customer support agents are equal. That's why Kylie AI clones your best support agents to automate routing, training, and low-impact customer inquiries. And of course, Inside Amazon is one of our really fast-growing newsletters as that company becomes one of the most valuable and powerful companies in the history of humanity. And SageTree is one of our partners there, and they are a national sales and marketing agency dedicated to helping brands manage and grow their e-commerce business through strategy development, aggressive marketing, enhanced content, site placement, and advanced analytics. Okay, now that I've done a quick pause for the cause, let's get back to this moment in the Senate hearings.
This morning, I must say, though, I'm disappointed that you're here and not your CEOs. Because we're talking about policy and the policies of the companies, and it's fine to send general counsel, but I think if you could take a message back from this committee, if we go through this exercise again, we would appreciate seeing the top people who are actually making the decision.
So that was Senator King, Senator Angus King from Maine. I guess he's an independent, and he was lamenting the fact that these companies chose to send their general counsels instead of their CEOs. Austin, what are your thoughts on this CYA, send your GC?
Yeah, so I think, I don't know, there are lots of ways to look at this. I think that it's possible that the legal teams at these companies were kind of telling the CEOs they couldn't go. It's possible that there was concern that the CEOs would say the wrong thing. And then I think that, yeah, I don't know. I think it would have been cool to see at least one of these companies decide to sort of step up and send the CEO to who really can be accountable to every single decision that these companies have made and can speak kind of unilaterally for the company instead of a lawyer who is going to kind of deflect and probably kind of be able to avoid answers by saying they don't know necessarily the answer to these questions. So I think it would be really cool to see a CEO of at least one of these companies show up and speak unilaterally for the company.
All right, Lon, I'll hand that same question over to you. Not seeing Zuckerberg here, to me, seemed odd. Why do you think Zuck's not there, and what do you think this impact is of not owning the issue?
Purely on a PR level, even if they don't think the CEOs would have anything additional to contribute that the general counsels do, it's just an expression that they're taking this seriously. The first mistake that Zuckerberg made after this story first started to break was denying it, was making it seem little and insignificant, downplaying the importance. Oh, that's a crazy idea that would ever happen. He now has this great opportunity to sort of own up. I was wrong. I underestimated how serious this was. We're going to be much more serious now. Like, that's what I think people wanted to see. That's what the senators wanted to see. That's what the American people wanted to see. And to not do that, and the fact that Zuckerberg today is visiting with the president of China in Beijing, it reflects the fact that he's not taking this seriously. I mean, that's what it communicates to me, is that he doesn't think this is a big enough deal. He's on his international I want to be president tour, and he doesn't think he needs to take a few days, even if that's not the truth. And I think it's very possible that Austin's right, and the lawyer said, don't do this. That's how it looks to a bystander.
Yeah, and the really challenging thing about this is you have a backdrop of political aspiration from Zuckerberg, which you pointed out earlier today to Milan, which is if Zuckerberg truly wants to run for office, this is his perfect opportunity to jump in there and to make it is the leadership moment. This was his moment to come in and say, listen, we made mistakes, we take it seriously, and here's what we're going to do to resolve these issues. He could have come in there and just run the table. And, you know, he's a smart cat, obviously. He's not a great speaker, so I think maybe that was part of the problem. I think they're still concerned that he, in an unscripted format, may crack under the pressure because, you know, 10 years ago when Kara Swisher interviewed him, he had a panic attack almost on stage. He was sweating, and it was kind of an embarrassing moment. Listen, I feel for the guy. I understand some people have anxiety being on stage or being under the gun. So I don't fault him for that, but I do fault him for not being there when he made a commitment to visit 50 states in a year and hang out with farmers, and he's taking all these pictures and got his whole social media machine doing this. And in addition to that, he conspired, according to lawsuits and SMS messages that have been revealed, to get Facebook's board to approve him taking a leave of absence while still controlling Facebook in order to run for office. And so those, if you do Mark Andreessen, Zuckerberg, board of directors, SMS messages, you can actually see these. And in it, Mark Andreessen is coaching Zuckerberg how to get the rest of the board to give him these ridiculous rights. And there's actually some lawsuits around this now. So it's a shareholder lawsuit. I'm not sure if it's been resolved or not, but you can type in Facebook shareholder lawsuit Mark Andreessen, and you'll see some stories about this from last year. I'm sure they'll wind up selling it. And, during it, Andreessen texted Zuckerberg, "This line of argument is not helping." And then in all caps, "Now we're cooking with oil. The cat's in the bag and the bag's in the river." Like, this is like crazy stuff that Mark Andreessen was saying to Zuckerberg to manipulate the other board members. Now, at the end of the day, you don't have to own the stock, and if the stock's gone up, I mean, what is the lawsuit here? You tripled your money. But putting that aside, this is incredibly bad optics to not show up and to send your GCs. It's just terrible, I believe.
And think about the absurdity of what you're saying. You're saying on one hand, he's scheming like, I want to run for office, I want to be president, I want to represent people, I want to be a leader. And then you're saying, well, maybe he was afraid to tell senators what happened to his own company because he's going to have a panic attack. I get panic attacks. I'm not trying to judge that, but one or the other. Like, you either have aspirations to be a real figure that people can rally behind and people believe in and who's got a vision for where you want to take things, or you're like, I don't know, these things happen and we can't figure it out. Like, you kind of have to be one or the other. He's straddling this line that is nonsensical at this point.
I think if he has these aspirations, then this obviously was a chance for him to have that leadership moment. But at the same time, I can see I was just thinking about Elizabeth Warren when she was grilling the CEO of Wells Fargo in a similar kind of hearing to this, and it's such a compelling sort of soundbite that I'll never forget. It just was so compelling to kind of hear all this line of questioning, and I think if he does have these political aspirations, then simply not going so that he doesn't have to campaign against this sort of clip of senators calling him out for all of these things, and instead now we have clips of general counsel fielding these questions, and so not an excuse and not excusing it. yeah, exactly. But I think maybe he might have saved some sound bites that would have haunted him in the future running for office.
I think that's an interesting strategic take on it. And as we wrap up here, I'll just say Senator Feinstein said, "We're at the beginning of what could be a cyber war, and the companies are not doing enough to address the problem. We are not going away, and this is a very big deal." It seems to me that this is the start of something, this is the end of the beginning, not the beginning of the end. I'm not sure exactly who came up with that quote, but this does seem to be the start of big tech being held accountable. And it seems to me that while the newspaper industry and the ad industry did do a good job of regulating themselves largely, and we don't see a ton of regulation around newspapers, we do see regulation in advertising because they weren't as trustworthy or forthright in monitoring themselves. What do we think happens from here? Lon, what are your thoughts? What happens from here? What should happen in your mind?
Yeah, I think hearing that from Feinstein in particular, she's the senator that's always out in front, and she's so proud to represent Silicon Valley. She has all this belief in these tech companies. Like, she's their ally in there. And the fact that she is now taking this turn and sort of speaking up in favor of regulation, to me, I feel like there is some sort of regulation that if it doesn't happen, it's at least going to start being presented. And these tech companies, the leaders of these tech companies are going to have, they need a better answer. Right now, I don't feel like anybody feels like they got an answer. We got here's this horrible thing that happened. Here's some systems that we have to try to fight it that are not that great, that weren't very effective. And I think that that's sort of it. And it's been a lot of deflection and blame, who's gets blamed and whatever. If the tech companies very soon, I would say within the next 3 to 6 months, don't give us some sort of clearer vision for what they're going to do to make sure things like this don't just keep happening forever. I think that we're going to be looking at politics and politicians having to get involved. And I honestly don't think anybody's going to like that. I don't think that's going to make the situation better. Honestly, I just think it's inevitable if we don't feel like there's a satisfactory answer coming from the companies themselves.
Austin, what should happen from here? If in your world, if you were able to wave a magic wand and decide what regulation, let's assume these companies don't regulate themselves and they filibuster like they've done to date, what would you do if you could write the legislation? Take a minute to think about that.
So, well, I guess I'll start just saying I don't actually think regulation is the single solution. So to me, there are so many constituents. So there are the government regulators, there are employees of these companies and leaders at the companies, there are users of these platforms, and then there are customers who are buying ads on the platforms. And I think the accountability lies on all of those constituents to sort of stand up for what they think these companies should be doing. And so I would like to see employees inside of Facebook standing up and pushing their leadership to solve these problems internally. And I would like to see users of the platform, I don't know, maybe fleeing the platform or doing whatever they can to show Facebook, you can't just do this type of thing and get away with it. And if you want to continue to be this massive revenue-driving ad platform, then you have to show some corporate responsibility. And then I think regulators can kind of help to catalyze all of that. But I think in terms of specific regulation, I don't know. I think it's really hard. I think more transparency into who's buying ads, how they're targeting. These are all the things that you've talked about, and then kind of restrictions for for how you know how Facebook can know who's actually making these purchases, and then on the user side to know I'm seeing this ad for this reason. I think things like that could be really, really powerful. But overall, I think regulations aren't going to be the sort of silver bullet that solves this whole thing.
Interestingly,
I don't think so. Yeah. One more thing I would throw out that people aren't really talking about. I think education and media literacy and drilling that into our citizenry's heads earlier is also a thing that we as a society, obviously it's not up to Google and Facebook to do that, but that's something we should really be thinking about, because sometimes these things are very nefarious and it's like, what are you going to do? People fall for it. Stuff comes up on your feed and you trust it. But on another level, we could be doing a better job. We're so good at training people in high school to read Shakespeare and novels, and that's great. But in between some of the novel, like read To Kill a Mockingbird, and then maybe a segment about how to tell if something is propaganda, or like how to look at the sources of the information and figure out if you trust it, and how to compare something like a blog versus a New York Times article versus a CNN story. We're not really teaching people these skills. We're sort of counting on them to figure it out because we teach them reading comprehension with, essays and short stories. And so I think that that's another angle that we as a society should really be coming at, that communication technology has gotten so sophisticated, we're not doing a good job of keeping up with it as citizens.
And I'll tell you what I think is the end game here. The EU has fined Google $2.4 billion for anti-competitive practices relating to local search and comparison shopping, I believe. And Google has not been able to settle with them to not have another set of fines for other anti-competitive violations. On top of that, people don't know this largely, but the EU also fined Facebook over $100 million in relation to the WhatsApp disclosures around data. And Stratechery, written by Ben Thompson, an excellent email newsletter, he said, I don't think they should be allowed to buy TBH, a small, under $80 million acquisition, which should sail through. So now if a very intelligent person like Ben believes, hey, Facebook is overreached, Facebook is too large, they shouldn't be able to do acquisitions, and the EU is now fining Facebook for the largest acquisition they ever did, WhatsApp, and starting to drill into the inner workings of Google's competitive practices, I believe that this is an existential crisis for the growth of Facebook. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't buy the stock and it's not going to appreciate, but I do think that if the situation today came up where they wanted to buy an asset in the Facebook, in the WhatsApp range, a $20 billion asset or a $10 billion asset, Snapchat, et cetera, they would be faced with a massive, massive backlash. And so what these tech companies don't realize is that they are going to not only face backlash in the EU, which is expected, but a small market for them, they might also get kicked out of certain countries. It is completely conceivable that a group of people would say, we don't want Facebook here, like China has never allowed them to be there, and why he's in China right now, begging to be brought to China. So I think that the existential crisis here, beyond looking like you're predatory and amoral, is that you will not be able to acquire companies, and you will be sanctioned, and you may even be banned from operating in some countries. This is an incredibly important moment in history for our democracy and for humanity. And that's why we did this emergency podcast to discuss the topic as it's fresh in people's minds. And we're 2 out of 3 days into this committee meeting. Let me thank Lon Harris for being with us, editor-in-chief of Inside.com.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Everybody can follow Lon and his musings. He's pretty funny on the Twitter, LONS. And also let me thank Inside.com President Austin Smith for being with us.
Thank you so much. This was fun.
All right, we're going to publish this very quickly, and I'll just say one more thank you. Thanks to some of our partners on Inside Security. Endgame is the only endpoint security solution that stops targeted attacks and all of their components before damage and loss with the people you already have. Thank you, Endgame. Also, Knock Knock Labs, they are transforming authentication by unifying it into one standard protocol, giving businesses the control they need. Both are sponsoring Inside.com/security, Inside Security. And finally, BitClave is sponsoring Inside Bitcoin. BitClave is a startup focused on the creation of next-generation decentralized search powered by privacy and security of blockchain technology. Thanks again to the folks who are sponsoring Inside.com. You can visit all of the sponsors at sponsors.inside.com. They help keep the newsletters largely free and available to the community and pay the writers. Okay, we'll see you all next time on This Week in Startups. Bye-bye.